really gets hammered, and they put some salt in, drive quick on 390 and 391. That takes a while because the landowners, including tenants,
Fixed it.
only allow an outfitter to come in on that property to harvest, and they're normally looking for a bit of land, so if they female, it's gonna continue perpetuating that population, they'll get harvested. So then they start overrunning, and then what happens? Well, it's a reserve for land, and then they come out, and then they get into trouble like the one that was took a orchard. That's nothing new. It's just people are just now kind of seeing what's really going on. So, it's a big, long story, and it's been.
You can't date it.
Thank you.
I did not want to send it to you.
You're fine, sorry.
If you notice, I like kept it short. Real short.
We need order, right?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Morning, we'll open the meeting with public comment. Is there any public comment?
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question?
Yes.
It wasn't really stated, but are we kind of moving this meeting room to the bank building?
That's the plan.
If so, where is parking available over there? You've got 2 solid blocks out here, plus side streets. I don't think there's that much parking over there. Just a question. Thank you.
Well, Shirley, just there, did you know that there was parking on the other side of the dentist's office?
There is, but when the dentist clients are all there and when the workers are there, there's no parking there. I mean, you can park there on weekends. Perhaps that's not when you want the meeting, I'm not sure.
Right.
But I think that might be an issue, I don't know. Just a question.
Any other public comment? Do we have the resolutions for the tax?
I have an extra copy if you want it. It's
Yes,
been
sir.
in the clerk and recorder's office all week.
Did you ever
I do, yes.
go to the podium, please?
Okay. Hi, Craig Burns. There's been a question, I know there's a new federal law now signed about animal abuse. So it kind of gives a responsibility for local governments to step up with their handling of animals. The only person who's qualified to handle local canines inside of the entire county would be whoever's the trained person for Townsend. And so the county is currently, to my understanding, using the person from Townsend to, I don't know, consult with dogs. It's kind of unclear of how that relationship is working with canines out in the county, as Townsend doesn't really have a relationship with the county to do county, exploits like that. But the county doesn't have any way of actually handling their canines. So they're not qualified to handle rabid dogs, anything. They would call the old handler here, and then he would go out and help them. A case that's been brought up, or a couple, is that the local sheriff, when they do handle a dog or have a dog on a large out in the county, they would then bring it to Townsend, and Townsend has confirmed that they've dropped it in the Townsend kennel without notifying the kennel master. And so that means that the canine unit of the sheriff is running completely separate, having not coordinating with Townsend at all, and is also putting canines that are in Townsend at risk, because they're not certified to tell whether a dog has rabies and how to handle that dog with rabies. If they were to inadvertently grab a dog at large out in the country, take it back, as they said, take it to the Townsend kennel, and put that rabid dog in that kennel, it could possibly, infect the dogs that were there or future dogs. So it's kind of a requirement that whenever the sheriff goes out and handles dogs, that it has a canine handler or somebody that it could call. The the city of Townsend is paying the county for services. So the county needs to figure something out where the county can either use, buy Townsend services, or they need to have their own canine handler that can then have dual access to that kennel. But it's completely unacceptable that a member of the sheriff would take an animal and leave it for the entire weekend without food or water at the local kennel. And there's no accountability for that process. So unless someone was to inquire, there's no way we would know that there's that gap there. So I would appreciate you guys taking this to the sheriff and saying, hey, we need to deal with the canine certifications, because if you take your dogs, if you take a canine to the kennel and it dies now, that could be breaking a federal law at this point, which would be animal abuse. And then that would be on the county's liability for that animal abuse. So, thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other public comment? We will move on to the 10 o'clock hearing to adopt a resolution to forgive property taxes for the Raidersburg Historical Society. So we will close the commissioners' meeting and open the hearing. This is a resolution refunding property taxes for the fiscal year 2018-19. Whereas the Raidersburg Historical Preservation Society is a domestic nonprofit corporation organized to preserve the historical and community attributes of the Raidersburg community. Whereas Raidersburg Historical Preservation Society was formed in 2009, has been in good standing as a nonprofit organization since that date. Whereas nonprofit, historical, and educational organizations are exempt from property taxation under Montana Code annotated 156201. Whereas Raidersburg Historical Preservation Society is required by law property deed, IRS letter granting them 501c status, and a letter requesting permanent tax exempt status. And whereas despite good faith intentions, Raidersburg Historical Preservation Society missed the deadline to qualify for permanent tax exempt status for fiscal year 19. And whereas Raidersburg Historical Preservation Society will pursue permanent tax exempt status for said property in 2020 with the above mentioned documentation. And whereas the Broadwater County Commissioners are empowered to refund property taxes imposed under Montana Code annotated 1516-6031C, now therefore it be resolved by order of the Broadwater County Commissioners, the property taxes assessed on the real property of Raidersburg Historical Preservation Society consisting of historical buildings in the unincorporated town of Raidersburg are refunded for the fiscal year 2018-2019, dated this December 23rd day of December 2019. Is there any public comment? Any questions? Seeing none, we will close the hearing and reopen the commissioners' hearing for a decision to adopt the resolution to forgive property taxes for the Raidersburg Historical Preservation Society. Is there any discussion?
Well, they've definitely done their homework, and they've got all their documents in order, and it's been something they've been trying to do for a while, so commend them on that. I guess I would make the motion that we approve the tax refunds for years 2018 and 19 for Raidersburg Historical Society.
Is there a second?
Absolutely, I'll second the motion.
Motion been made and second to approve the resolution refunding property taxes for fiscal years 2018-19 for the Raidersburg Historical Preservation Society. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries.
Thank you.
forgive property tax interest and late penalty for Graymont Western. Doug, did you wanna?
Yeah, I spoke with Graymont last week on their property taxes, and as I was on the phone call with them, the gentleman I was speaking to mentioned that the 2018 were also delinquent. And when I looked at it, they have 5 tax bills, and 3 of those were going to the incorrect address. So I'm not sure if we ever received their bill back or not. I know their 2019 bill for this same property we're talking about, I just received it back in the mail on the 17th of December. So I don't know why it takes so long for us to get these back from the post office, but he just asked me if I would ask you folks if you would forgive the penalty and interest on that 2018. It's a $332,000 property tax that they pay. So their penalty and interest would be $15,718.99. And I told him I would come and talk to you. I know they've been a good organization in town, and we've never had a problem with them before on their taxes. I'm sure this was just a bill not getting to them. They were going to, we had 3 different addresses. 2 years ago, we started to outsource our bills and have them mailed out by a private company. When we were mailing them out, we would pick all the Graymont bills and just mail them to the correct address. That's probably why there were 3 different addresses. It's just before it didn't, we knew where to send them and these people didn't, I think is what happened. So I've got all the addresses corrected to where they're all going to the same location now.
This is one of those that looks to be human error, not Greenmont's fault. They were trying to find their tax bills in order to pay their taxes. So based on the history and what Doug has described, I move that we forgive the property tax, interest and penalties for this year's Graymont Western tax bill.
And you said they're current now, Bill? They're now current.
They are, in fact, the gentleman I spoke with went ahead and sent me the full payment for this, penalty and interest included, so
Okay.
if, you know, we have the money for it, if it's up to you folks if you wanna not charge them for that. They're in good faith, he sent the full amount and just said he would let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah, I agree, we can't penalize them for that mistake, so I would second that motion.
Motion's been made to forgive the property tax interest and late penalty for Graymont Western due to a bad address from the person who was mailing out the tax bills. Is there any further discussion? Yes, Tim?
Just a quick question, is this forgiveness for just 2018 taxes, or are you going, I did not hear you talk about 2 years?
Just 2018,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I'd like you to consider the precedent we're setting, or that you're setting. We just talked about the fee being forgiven and the taxes and the late for the Preservation Society. The Graymont's been here a long time, and they have had some difficulty in late fee, in paying late. Maybe not forgive the entire fee, because it does set a precedent that people say, I never got a bill, I guess I don't have to pay. They know when it's due every year. We all know when our taxes are due. It doesn't take anything but a phone call to call this office to find out what your taxes are, to call the county. So to just, I understand they are wonderful supporters of this community, but they've been here a long time and they know the process. To forgive them completely of a $15,000 fee, up to you. But think of the precedent you're setting for the rest of the people in the county. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Doug, could you address the efforts they went through? It sounds like they did try and find those bills and did try and follow up. Can you address that? Because I think Jen makes a really good point, and I think we should address that so that
Yeah,
everybody knows.
Like I said, he was the one who contacted me, and he hadn't received 3 of his bills this year. When I emailed those bills to him, he was the one that brought up the fact that 2018 had not been paid. So, I think it's just, they have their office here in Townsend, but most of the financial things are done in Salt Lake. So I'm not sure who got the 2018 bill, if anyone did, but he was the one that contacted me, and he's, like I said, he sent me the full amount. He just asked if I would ask you guys to forgive that amount since the bill had never been received by them.
Did they pay for the 2 bills they did receive?
They did, yep,
So this is just on the 3 bills that were lost, right?
Yeah, they've paid on all their bills.
The late fee and the penalty is just on the 3 bills that were lost, or is that on all 5 bills?
No, just on this 2018,
Okay, just the ones that were lost?
yep.
Okay.
Where was the bad address compared to the good address?
Well, they both went to Salt Lake, but I'm not sure if the one address, if they still have that, or it was a building with a suite number, and their new address is just a 585 West South Ridge Circle, Sandy, Utah. The old one went to 3950 South 700 East Suite 301, Salt Lake City, Utah.
Have they been late on paying taxes other than the ones that got lost?
No.
Okay.
No,
Yes, Craig?
If Mr. Ellis is willing to step forward for them and even procure, and even step forward, because I think that says everything, that he has a vested interest in this, or he would have stood against it and said something, and he's the one handling it. So I say that because he's willing to step forward for them and say that it is an error in his department or a misunderstanding, and it affects his relationship, then I think that if he says that it's okay, then really that should be the go-to. Because he's the one actually handling that. I mean, obviously the money's to you, but he has the relationship.
Thank you. Is there any further comment or discussion? Is there a motion been made? Is there a second?
It has been seconded.
Yeah, it's been seconded.
Okay, a motion's been made and seconded to forgive the property tax interest and late penalty for Greymount Western. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I do think that Jen's points are well made. We have looked at both these issues quite a bit over the last maybe 6 weeks. They don't set a precedent because there really are such strong extenuating circumstances that are individual to both of them. Both the Radersburg Historical Preservation Society, we did forgive your taxes for the last 2 years. We already passed it, so yeah, thanks for coming, you guys. And then also Greymount because of their history. So, but I appreciate what you say, and it's taken to heart. Thank you.
So if we can go to our 10-15 Big Elk Divide Restoration Committee support letter for landscape restoration. This is a letter of support for the Montana Big Elk Divide Collaborative Forest Landscape Restoration Project. Dear Supervisor Bill Avery, the Broadwater County Board of County Commissioners support and endorse the Helena, Lewis, and Clark Forest and the Big Elk Divide Restoration Committee partnership efforts to propose the Montana Big Elk Divide project. We encourage your selection of this project for funding for the duration of the project. Thank you for the opportunity. Is there a vote on it?
Mr. Chairman, if I may ask Al a quick question. Al, would the collaborative prefer that we vote to sign on to the joint letter from all the members, or that we send our own as the Broadwater County Commission? Does it matter? Is either way better? Is there a preference?
I'm not sure I understand the difference in what you're asking.
I understand there's a joint letter, and there was some talk that it might be better to just sign on to that, or would it be better if we send a letter ourselves, or do both?
At this point, that letter would be wonderful.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
thank you.
We received this last week.
Is this did you get the email from, I believe it was from district court, that they had dismissed the iron mass? Is that part of this project also?
No.
It's different?
That was part of the Elkhorn Restoration Committee's work before we expanded and became the Big Elk Divide Restoration Committee. So it's, the core of the group is still the same, and it's the same kind of work, just on a much larger landscape. So the request to you is the support for the project proposal that the Big Elk Divide Restoration Committee and the Forest Service are working in partnership together to submit to the Washington office.
Okay. Tim?
Just a quick clarification, or maybe you can take it as a comment. Tim Ravendall, resident, been following this for a long time. Elkhorn Working Group has been in effect to enhance the abilities for the resources in the Elkhorn Mountains. This expansion of this committee, which is an advisory committee, is going to be looking at an expansion of funding opportunities that come from the federal government. I, like a lot of citizens, have gotten the notice that the federal government's broke. We're not sure where that money's coming from, but at any rate, normally those grants come with strings attached where local government and citizens at the local level are required to contribute, at least in part or in kind, to qualify those grants. I just really would like to make sure that that is transparent as we move forward. Tom Williams was in here at the last meeting and talked about some of the concerns that they have on that end moving forward. There's a letter coming from that side. Even though it may be a little bit different, they're all combined and they're all looking at the same thing. So please don't get the cart in front of the horse. Make sure that people know what's going on. Thank you.
Okay. So where's the funding for the project that you proposed? Is that coming from a Forest Service grant, Al?
Yeah, Al Christopherson. It's part of the Forest Service's national program, so they nationally have set up, I believe it's $40 million a year for the next 10 years. And while they can't obligate money outside of the budget year they got, so they're only obligating $40 million a year. That goes to potentially 10 new projects nationally, and the continuation of projects that the national committee selects to continue on beyond their 10-year or 8-year window when they were selected previously. So that's appropriated funds that the Forest Service has. Now, Tim's right from the standpoint these things don't all come nice and clean and all rolled up in a nice little bundle, because there are requirements for these kinds of projects for the partners involved to
help bring those projects to fruition and completion. One of the nice things about this project is that the agency can use funds that they get out of like timber sales or wherever they get those receipts off of projects. It's kind of like the stewardship authority they got here some years ago. They can take that money and roll it back into projects. So that's a big part of what this is. A large part of the money for this is gonna probably come out of timber sale receipts that come off the forest. There will be partnership money, and we know that. We've already got partners that are already engaged in doing the kinds of follow-up work that come out of these projects. So I'm familiar with the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. They put a lot of money out on the ground to do habitat work. Those kind of partnerships will continue. We hope to be able to strengthen them. And so that's part of this whole package that's going to get looked at nationally, is how well any project stands up that shows the kind of partnership relationships that they have. Now, sending a letter of support does not obligate anybody to being a funding partner. And I wouldn't expect that we would come to you and ask you for funding to support stuff out on the ground. That would come from other partnerships that are already in existence, and there may be some new ones that pop up. That's what happens with these kinds. This is the exact same kind of project that was the Southwest Crown project up on Cedar Lake. It's affected part of the county. Lincoln, the Nevada mountain country up there has been part of it. Some of the stuff coming out of the Lincoln district has been part of that Southwest Crown project. And I don't believe you guys have been asked to partner into that thing. But there's a lot of partnership comes to it. When these get picked as a national project, they're a pretty high profile project. I don't know if that helps or not. So was that project in Lewis and Clark County? The Lincoln project? Yes, I'm sorry, yeah.
So but Lewis and Clark County they didn't receive a request, or were they required to do any funding through the county?
I couldn't tell you that, I don't know. I wasn't part of that setup of that project.
Okay.
If there was county money, it might have been something like weeds, some of those kind of things, but I honestly don't know.
All right. Thank you, Al. Yes, Tim?
Just a real quick follow-up. Maybe I need to expand just a hair. It's not always the county commission that gets engaged in these, but a local taxing authority like the Broadwater County Conservation District does engage directly into these projects. And one last thing that I want to make sure that we keep in recognition here in Broadwater County, according to our customs and cultures, is we are continually losing access for multiple use of these public lands. And we've got to be careful we don't get selling the barn just to try and feed the horse. So I use acronyms to get me in trouble, but that's okay. I'm used to it. Thank you.
Yes, Craig?
Is just some clarification, does this include closing access to land? Is that something that this is inherent with? That this is a closed conservation area, or is this just the management of land? Is it like singleizing land? I mean, I'm just questioning, so in following up with that, is kind of approving this or kind of going forward with this potentially limiting access to land in Broadwater County?
The projects that are put into this thing are projects that the Forest Service puts forward, and then we partner into the implementation of those projects. So, they've got to go through their public involvement, NEPA process, all that kind of stuff. So I can't stand here and tell you what every one of those projects is or could be, but they're all done, just like all the Forest Service projects.
what this does is it bundles the projects that the Forest Service does over a 10-year period and puts them in a different pot so that the money coming from those projects can be moved around on the landscape to do the things that, you know, the wildlife habitat, the stream restoration, the road maintenance work, all of those kinds of things, the whole gamut of that kind of stuff is gonna be part of that larger package over a 10-year period.
I don't believe that there's an argument about preservation, obviously not, for the future, but there's definitely an argument of being limited to the land, even more limited than what we are. I mean, if we were to look 10 years back, our access to the same land that you're talking about has been highly limited. If you go up Duck Creek and try to cross over to White Sulphur Springs, they've shut down every single side road that, and they don't maintain the main road. And when the Deep Creek Canyon project was going on, and they closed the canyon, they were diverting people over the mountain, but through an unmaintained road. I just tried to go over that road, and it's nearly impassable now. And so there's a concern that our access into the mountain ranges is being highly limited by these kind of conservation efforts, as saying, hey, we're not allowed to drive off into the forest, we're not allowed to go and use off-road vehicles, not allowed to use snowmobiles, in regards to disturbing animal life. And I know there's a balance, but from my experience from being here, I'm a 5th generation Montanan, and I've never seen restriction to access like this in my lifetime, and neither has my family. And so there's an actual, people are perked up right now because it's been so many years of this kind of limitation. So I think before the county goes forward with any kind of, you know, giving conservation power of limitation to anybody, it needs to be thoroughly explored, because we've already lost so much land access to the federal government. It might be their land, sort of, but we share it, and they need to give access to it. And the roads right now are dismal. I mean, they're the worst they've ever been. And that has to be addressed, either through county side or through the federal government side. And so we're talking about $40 million, but we can't even drive over the roads. I mean, so some of the money's got to go back into the people's availability of that land. So, you know, maybe dog earing, marking accessible roads and accessible areas. But anybody who's been up in the mountain ranges as of late can tell you there's very limited access. So that's why people are asking now, you know, what's the range of conservation this is going to bring, because more conservation is going to give less access. So I think we just all want to be very clear about this access being, transparent, so that everybody knows whether we're losing it or not, so that 10 years later our kids aren't, you know, used to that we don't have access to this land, which is happening. So before we give all these grants into the federal government, we should have some accountability for the federal government, making sure that they're doing what they're supposed to do, which is the connectivity to our county roads, which they're not doing. So here we're conserving animals, but we're really not helping the people of the county at all.
Thank you.
I think we kind of got off onto a little bit of a rabbit trail. The intent of the support letter is not, it has nothing to do with the roads. What this is, Craig, I appreciate what you were saying. This is more on the restoration of the landscape. The road issue is totally separate. So appreciate what you're saying, but these are really two
It
different
is not
things.
separate. I go up there all the
This
time.
support letter is,
Okay.
the access is not actually what this is about.
We'll agree to
This-
disagree.
Okay, that's fine, I was just trying to explain what this is, and I'll just let it go at that.
So is there a motion's been made to approve the letter of support? Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second it.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries.
Second part of that is a trust board request for mag chloride for the silos recreation area. This is a letter to the Broadwater County Trust Board. Dear Broadwater County Trust Board members, we appreciate the opportunity to partner again to improve services and safety for Broadwater County recreation facilities. The Commission is engaging with the Bureau of Reclamation and JSJ Incorporated to update and review contracts regarding the Silos recreation area. The area is a success today because of the work done by the Trust Board several decades ago that included, among other projects, dredging Broadwater Bay. A recent report showed Canyon Ferry Lake provides $14 million to the communities surrounding the reservoir from recreational activities, and the Fish, Wildlife, and Park cleaning stations reported triple the number of boaters at silos that the other marinas around the lake combined. Many Broadwater County businesses and families are supported by Canyon Ferry Lake and Broadwater Silos recreation area. Townsend Marine, Mustang Motel, Rocky Mountain Supply, Town Pump, Silos, KOA, Silos Junction, Big Bull, Bob Thriftway, and a variety of towns and bars, restaurants, hardware, and retail stores. But the Silos recreation area is in dire need of some upgrades, repairs, and general TLC beyond what JSJ Incorporated can do with a limited budget. The Silos Citizen Action Committee formed and worked together in partnership with interested groups such as Walleyes Groups, Citizens and Neighbors, Trust Board, Commission, and others to create a long-term vision for the Silos recreation area. The master plan is in process. Opening the contracts with BOR and JSJ Incorporated have brought repair needs to the surface. An increase in camping fees and a boat launch fee have been suggested to increase revenue to be used for such repairs. To most positively engage the recreating public, such improvements must be made on the front end. The purpose of the strategy is to show recreationists and citizens what we are doing to improve the facilities now. It is common knowledge the master plan will take years to implement. To complete negotiations, we require funding from the Trust Board. 1. Gazebos 1 and 2 need to be rebuilt. Both have been repaired by JSJ, but over the years and with heavy use, they now need rebuilding. Money was granted years ago and plans were drafted, but the project was stalled for reasons beyond JSJ or the county's control. BOR supports immediate rebuilds within the same footprint. Such work could be completed for this coming season and will need immediate approval. JSJ will continue to maintain, clean, and repair as needed. The master plan shows moving gazebo number 1. Realistically, this will not happen for years. The gazebo will be a safety concern if it is not addressed. It is the most popular gazebo. Road work and mag chloride for silos, roads, campground loops, and the main parking lot at the boat launch. The plan with BOR and SJS Incorporated is to utilize the BOR reservation system, increasing camping fees from $10 a night to $12 a night, erect a Silos recreation area sign at the highway, impose a boat launch fee system, and include the day use area in the BOR contract for JSJ Incorporated maintenance. Thank you for your work creating Broadwater Bay and great improvements to the Silos recreation area. We look forward to continuing to work together for the citizens of Broadwater County and those recreationists that come here to enjoy our piece of paradise. Is there any comments? Debbie, do you know the money that was allocated for the gazebos, was that allocated out of the trust board?
Yeah, 2, maybe 3 years ago, JSJ came to the trust board with a grant for for the gazebos. And time went by, our grant process is, you have 2 years to use it, and I don't recall why now she was not able to put that together.
Is that money still available, or has it been
It would have to be a new grant request.
a new grant?
It
Okay,
has expired.
okay.
And that would be the purpose of this letter, is to address that, because it shouldn't be Sharon putting in grants, it should be us.
Right.
And we wouldn't grant or request a grant, we would put a letter for it.
I think, is there some approval from the BOR to work on those gazebos?
Mhm.
I think there is, isn't there?
There is, I brought the email, this was shared with you guys some weeks ago. Basically, yes, we also discussed this in person in our meeting. As long as we stay in the same footprint, we don't need to do any kind of an EIS or an EA, environmental studies. If we wanna do bigger, different shape, then we would have to go through that process. But in order to get it done for this coming season, if we stay in that same footprint, we address the safety concern, it's less expensive, and it's more expedient, we can get it done now.
And wasn't there some support from Walleyes? Did they wanna help a little bit?
That was gazebo number 4 that they built.
Yeah.
And what they would like to do is build a wall, we also have approval from BOR on this, we're not going to the trust board with it, so it's not part of this letter. They wanna build a wall on the north and the west walls of that gazebo, so that when it is blowing out there, there is nice protection under that particular gazebo.
Alan and Debbie, I think this conversation or a topic for coming up in your next meeting, right?
Yes, and
Talk about
January
it.
7th at noon.
Right.
It will be on the agenda.
Be on your agenda.
So, I guess this is for Al and Debbie both, is the location of these gazebos as they are now, is that where they will be in the master plan? I mean, I don't see any sense in building a gazebo and then the master plan comes along and changes it. So if we make that commitment to redo those constructions this year, then is that gonna be a bearing point on that master plan? So I don't wanna build them and then move them.
I was going to concerns about these.
So let me speak maybe to the master plan process. I think the reason that they were held up before was because they were different design than what was currently out there. And so, as I recall the discussions with the BOR on the ground, is if you're gonna change the footprint, then they need to spend their time to figure out what that does, okay? So if you're not gonna change the footprint and just either remodel or redo the gazebo footprint that's there, it's my understanding then that it's just a replacement thing and they can deal with that. The master plan is gonna look at the design of the whole area out there and look at traffic flows and users and where, you know, all the pinch points are and all that kind of stuff, trying to figure out where those gazebos are now. I mean, they're major structures. So to not try and work as much as they can with whoever gets the contract to do that, I think, you know, they gotta answer the questions of, well, why would you move? Why would you have to move and can you not design around them? I think the discussion before has always been, well, if you're gonna go in and build a big new structure, then make sure it's gonna be in the right place, because I don't think that exercise has been gone through much in the past. So, you know, the master plan will go through that process. You'll be part of it, the BOR be part of it, everybody here that wants to be part of it can be part of that process. It's gonna be an open public process. And talk about where they want stuff and why and all those kind of things. So I think it's gonna be where everybody tries to point, put things together on the ground that fit the best. And if they don't fit the best, then you gotta ask the question, well, is it worth the money to tear it down and move it? Cannot you structure the design of the campground and the user sites and all that stuff to fit what's there? I think that's just always been the discussion. Without a master plan, you don't know where everything is. Once you have one, then at least it lays it all out for you, and then those kind of questions kind of go away. It's more than design stuff. So, but I understand there are safety issues with a couple of them out there, and you know, if those can be dealt with without total major redos, fine. If they can't be, then the structure needs to be taken care of so that somebody doesn't get hurt. That kind of thing, so. I don't know what that, probably doesn't directly answer your question. There's a couple of things going on. You got current structures out there that need some help to work on. And then the other here, in a week, you're gonna be looking at bids on the master plan, and that process is gonna start to go now, so. Within a year, you should have, or sooner, the completed designs that everybody agrees to on the master plan, and then it's kind of a clear picture, so. Let me speak from the standpoint of the Citizens Action Group out there. These are all things that we've looked at and talked about. So I think from their perspective, it's good to see some movement on some things. Just think about the master plan coming and what that is going to tell you or show you.
Thank you, Al.
A couple of things. Everything in this letter is things we've already agreed to. One with Sharon, one through a vote of this commission. The gazebos, perhaps when we work with getting them rebuilt, we can state, we would like you to keep your eye on how these can be moved in the future. I think there's ways that we can address this. One of the things that actually delayed the rebuilding of these gazebos is the master plan. There was a thought that, well, the master plan's coming, we don't know what that's gonna look like. Let's go ahead and nurse these another couple of years until we have something. Even when we get the master plan done in a year or so, it still doesn't wave a magic wand that, ta-da, it's all done. At that point, we need to phase 1, 2, 3 through whatever. We need to search out funding. So this is a long process. My concern is if we don't address these gazebos, they are going to get somebody hurt, and that's gonna land on us, especially since it is such a public issue that we've been trying to address and haven't. But again, this has already been agreed to. This letter is just putting it into words so that the trust board has something to sink their teeth into. So I think that's all I have unless you guys have any questions.
So could I just ask a question? What's your vision or expectation of the trust board as you give them a letter with this kind of information? I guess
Go ahead.
I'd say that it's gonna kind of direct your conversation to address these things, and you guys have discussed that.
Okay.
And I think mine is that, the original discussion that I had was that we would make the improvements to the road and to the parking lot at the main boat launch so that we can implement the boat launch, voluntary mandatory launch fee, so that we can get more funds without constantly tapping into the trust board's funds. We can generate funds from the boat launch to go to the next step on, which would be the roads. And I guess, you know, the gazebos would also be part of that. You could generate more income if you have a better facility. And then that money, like you said, that money has to go back to more improvements in the campground and the boat launch area.
And my vision is to honor what we have. So we have this diamond in the rough at Silos. We know from this report from FWP that there's $14 million generated annually, and we know that 3 times the voting is done at silos as all the other spots combined. That's a huge impact, positive impact for Broadwater County. And what I would like to do is realize what that asset is, and then move forward to make it as good as it can be.
So are there priorities in your guys' mind about what you want the trust board to take on first? Or just,
In my
Trying to
mind, we
address all
can't
of it.
move on with any kind of a plan without getting some basics done. So priorities would be mag chloride in the roads and the gazebos. And then from there, we can move on with updating contracts.
Any other discussion? Take a vote, or is there a motion to approve this letter?
And like I said, this has already been agreed to, it's just putting it into words so the trust board has a document. I would move that we sign this letter.
Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Motion been made and seconded to sign the letter and forward it on to the trust board. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries.
Mr. Chairman, I would just ask that if all 3 of you can come to that trust board meeting January 7th, that works in your calendar, because this is a big important discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
okay, our 10:30, item 6, Recreation Board. Request permission to make down payment for SST in Holloway Park and request to waive septic permit fees.
My name is Adam Six. I'm here with the Broadwater County City of Townsend Recreation Board. We've been working on a project to install a pit toilet at the Holloway Park site. The site was designated by a certified facility manager through an engineering firm. It was approved through the city. It was approved through our meetings. The city has agreed to be a installation contractor to dig a hole and backfill the site. Missoula Concrete makes these precast toilets. They will set the toilet, and the city has, we've clarified in the city's minutes to be the future maintenance partner. So the question, or the interest is, in order to initiate this process, we need a 50% deposit, which is $7,825. To start the process, they'll produce the toilet, they'll let us know when that's done, and then we can negotiate the installation stuff. After installation, the remaining balance is due. The other question we had is if there may be a way for the permitting fees on the septic side to be waived in this situation. I've been in contact with Sean Rowland. Sean Rowland has seen the site, and he's up to speed with it. The mayor was gracious enough to sign the form, and I believe you guys have that.
And as far as the fees, the septic permit fees, I believe we discussed that at Health Board, and there won't be
Outstanding.
very little work from him to do anyway, so I think the Board of Health agreed to waive those.
Perfect.
When we addressed this months ago, one of the biggest holdups was making sure that the city was on board. We now have that with that letter from the mayor. In my opinion, this is a really good project. It shines a light on how effective our recreation board can be and the good things that they want to do, especially for the kids of Townsend. So it's an easy vote for me. If you guys are ready, I'd be happy to make a motion. Or if you want to discuss, I'm happy to wait.
It's been a long time coming, Adam. I know you guys have been working hard on this project.
Yeah.
And I know you wanted to be done with it earlier than now, but this is the process, so.
That's right.
Thanks for being patient on that. And I think it's a great project that's gonna serve our citizens well.
As the liaison for this board, do you wanna make the
Sure,
motion?
I'll make the motion that we allow the down payment for the SST at Holloway Park.
I will second the motion and, make a friendly amendment that we support the process moving forward.
Sure.
Motion been made and second to approve the process of installing the SST in Holloway Park. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries.
I think there was one other piece of business, Adam, that you guys needed to do, and that was the the $2,500 donation to the Silos Action
Yes,
Committee.
yes. We also need to request approval to transfer $2,500 from the rec board account to the Silo Citizens Action Group in support of the design phase of the master plan, was that correct? Design phase of the master plan, is that where you guys are at?
Well, it's for the master plan.
Right. So, we produced a letter of support to their group, and we're looking to move that through at this level. SST stands for Sweet Smelling Toilet. It is a patented ventilation design with the precast toilet industry, just to clarify that acronym.
Thanks, Adam.
Welcome, thank you.
Thank you, Adam.
I move to approve, and support the, master plan donation from the rec board to the Citizens Action Group.
And I'll second.
Motion been made and second to approve the $2,500 transfer from the Broadwater Parks and Recreation to the Silos Area Master Plan. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Motion carries.
I'd like to thank the city, Mr. Mayor, thank you for digging the hole, helping, to dig the hole and maintain it after it's installed, all that. I know that was probably some discussion at your council meeting. So.
Some money, so
Yeah,
we want help.
all right, perfect, thank you.
Okay, 1040 Nicole Brown, Community Development Planning, Four Springs Estate Minor Subdivision, request final plat approval.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Can I give you these to pass around as I
Sure.
call them? March 24th. All right, so today I'm here to present to you the Four Springs minor subdivision. I believe they have met all of their conditions of of final plat approval. So those will be coming around as I read through these. Number 1, plans for sewage treatment and water supply shall be submitted to the Montana Department of Environmental Quality for review and approval. Certificate of subdivision approval shall be filed with the final plat. And they have the tags at the top that identify them as each.
Thanks, Sam.
Number 2 is also in the same packet as number 1. A stormwater drainage plan shall be submitted to DEQ for review and recommendation. All specifications and requirements of the approved plan shall be met. The stormwater plan is actually part of the DEQ approval. And number 3 also corresponds to number 13.